Guess what day it is today? Yes, it's wiring day.
Welcome back. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. The more likes and subscribes I get, the better my channel can show up on search engines. So I really do appreciate it. Keep pushing the buttons, and got a lot of comments on the last video. I really appreciate that as well. I do enjoy talking to people about stuff. And since we're doing wiring, I'm going to do more overview than specifics, because otherwise everyone will go to sleep. That being said, if there's something specific you really want to know how I did on the wiring, throw me a comment. I'll do what I can to answer you. Now, the chassis harness on this, I'm building myself, as we've discussed, color coding it. We've already got it run from the back to the front. We're going to build some more of the front stuff. The engine compartment's going to look like a mess. Now, the engine harness is a self-contained, standalone engine harness. And I've built these myself in the past. It's a lot of work. Not worth it to me. I would rather buy one from a reputable builder. For a couple of reasons. First of all, they use all new connectors, including the plug that goes into the computer. So when they build it completely from scratch, you don't have a bunch of extra pins or screwed up pins when you go to do the install. It's almost always wire colored to the manufacturer's wiring color. So that always helps if you ever have to go in and start searching for stuff or talking with someone with a factory diagram versus an aftermarket diagram. All the connectors, again, I said were new. The connectors on the engine, all that plastic gets brittle when it's been in a vehicle for years. So trying to reuse junkyard harnesses have a lot higher failure rate. Now, just because I ordered this standalone harness doesn't mean it's set up the way I want it, because it's not. Even though they called me and we discussed what I wanted on the harness, they always put in add-ons more for people's convenience, like oil pressure sending unit, temperature sending units, fan switches, starter, signal wires, all that kind of stuff. I don't want any of that. So first up is we're going to take this wiring harness apart and make it my way. Most people want all that stuff in, but again, I'm kind of a freak of nature, I guess. I like stuff kind of my own way, and that's how I'm going to do it. So let's get started with this harness, which is, as a side note, from Howell. They did do a pretty good job on the harness. First thing is be really neat and careful when you start taking it apart. There are a lot of wires that change directions within the harness. So as I'm taking it apart and as I'm putting it together, I'll wrap a piece of tape around that section. That way I keep everything a little neater. I also try to string the harness out so that it is very linear as I'm taking it apart and putting it together. Once I get things removed and tucked back away, then it's a matter of putting the loom back on. All right, I've got what I want removed out of here. Took out a bunch of the wiring that they include in it, which is for like starter signals, oil pressure, water. Since I've built my own complete harness for this, all my gauge cluster has its own harnesses, so I don't need those in any of this. I also didn't want my starter signal wire going through this particular harness either. The only other modification I made is the ALDL connector and the check engine light are going to be separate. I don't like that light being attached to the LDL connector. I've got my own check engine light. So I'm leaving this section of the harness open until I have it routed where I want. The last piece I did take out, I forgot to mention, is the fuse box assembly that comes with this harness. I'm using my own harness. Another side note is I am moving the ALDL connector inside, so keep track of your wires when you take that apart and put it together. I decided where I wanted to mount my computer, and thanks to Sam at Fly and Iron, he makes a really nice bracket for these full size. Currently it really looks like a mess, but as you are running wires and reaching their final destinations, things will get neater, a little more organized, a little cleaner. A lot of wire is going to end up at the fuse boxes, and a lot of wire is going to end up under the dash. Right now I have 2 fuse boxes in it, but I will be adding a third one because those 2 are going to get full pretty quick. And that's where the third one goes, right there. Just a reminder, the big wires with the mega fuse and the third wire coming out of the bottom, those go to either key on or 12-volt constant sources. My first design, I had a gauge up here instead of here. But preliminary wise, I'm going to run a row of switches down below, a row of gauges, and I'll have fuel, oil, water, and voltage. And then I'll have a tach and speedometer. This row of switches will be for things like accessories. It'll turn on the wipers. It'll turn on my rock lights, my auxiliary driving lights, the bed lights, hood lights, interior lights, stuff like this. I'll put a headlight switch. Initially, I was thinking about putting the heater switch and then the heater pull cable to control the heat here. But I think I'm going to, because I want to keep this electrical, I'll probably change that to like the ARB compressor, because I'm using 70 amp switches here. And then I'll use this for the ARB locker. The dotted lines here are that hacked up hole. And I'm sure that's going to have to get modified even more as I go. So when you're looking at the dash, there's a glove box. Then I'm going to have the gauge cluster. Now the steering column is here. There's another hole hacked here, so I think I'm going to build another plate here. I'll have the key and the check engine light. And there's another hole hacked up over here, and I think I'll just cover that with the lever lock park brake, I guess you could call it, that came with this thing, because if you got it, may as well use it. A little recycling. So that'll kind of be the total layout. So I started cutting out the dash plates. This looks really nice. I'll have a buddy of mine bead roll this so it has some rigidity to it. But you always see on these shows how one shot and it's already done. However, the reality is sometimes you just screw up and mismeasure something by an inch. So I have to do this. I'll take this one down to get it bead rolled. This one will be the right size. After changing my mind, a couple, 3 times, I finally came up with something I really liked, which is closer to the original idea that I had. So I start off with the plasma cutter, start chopping it up, and once I'm done with that, we'll clean it up with the burr. Once I get all the edges smooth, I start test fitting gauges, make sure they all fit. All the gauge holes are done. Now I just drill out the switch holes. A little bit of primer, and I'm using the black primer that eliminates rust. After that, I'll throw a couple good nice thick coats of the green paint on it. Once that's all good to go, I can do some test fitting. You may wonder what all those other holes that are in there are drilled for. I'll show you that in just a second. I also decided not to bead roll this. I just used the vinyl edging. Remember that piece of metal I miscut for the dash? Well, It was the right height, and I just trimmed it down so I can use that for my ignition and my check engine light panel. Did it the same way as the rest of the dash. The extra holes are for these. The bezels I got for the dash, they are separate from the gauges, and you just measure the outside of the gauge. I jumped on eBay, ordered some of these bezels. They came in polished aluminum. I had them anodized in black, and they also come with a gold popper, which I didn't use. I used the silver stainless steel screws instead. Test fit all of the gauges. Now, probably could have made the holes a little bit bigger. A couple of these gauges went in pretty tight. But once I had everything test fit, then it was a matter of putting all the bezels on first. And I used stainless steel screws. The bezels came with some really pretty copper pop rivets, which would look good in an airplane. But I think for my purposes, I think this was a better way to go. Once I had all the bezels in, then I started installing all the gauges, and those are, almost really too easy anymore because they have plastic mounts instead of the little horseshoes that you have to screw and bolt together. So that was an easy part. Once all that was done, then we can install the switches. Really like these cool little switches I found. They're a couple bucks a piece, little LED light on. They've got the power, the ground, and the accessory it's putting power to. So from the front, here's what we look like, and from the back, I'll show you here in a second. There we go. Switch is easy to mount. Gauge is easy to mount. Now I am going to start wiring the things I can piggyback together. For instance, all the power for the instruments are off of one lead, so I can piggyback those together. All the grounds for the switches are piggybacked together. The lights for the night lights and the gauges are all piggybacked together. After I do this, now I can start wiring the sending units or the trigger wires for whatever components are, and then start looming your harness together. Notice the turn signal indicators and the bright indicator I found. You can see here on the back of the dash, the harnesses are starting to come together for the looms, for the sending units, and for the accessory and power wires. Test fit. Another little side note, I did have to mount and modify the accelerator pedal because it's a fly-by-wire, so I have a harness coming in for that, so it fits right. Once it was in, continue bundling and looming harnesses till they come together. When you look at the back of this dash and start seeing the harnesses, it's actually very neat as far as dashes go. Now back to outside the vehicle. I need to get the headlights kind of wiring sorted out and split, because you've got one wire that's going to feed two headlights, one wire that's going to feed the high beams, one wire that's going to feed both marker lights, one wire that's going to feed two driving lights, wire that's going to feed the rock lights, etc. So I found a location that I can work with where I can split this harness and make it a little neater. Sometimes I crimp them, sometimes I solder them, but I always make sure I use at least. Finished up this section of wire splitting, so then I routed everything to the actual location it's going to be used at. Now we can start installing some lights. I found some lights that I liked how they fit, and they were LED marker signal, but they did not fit the original bracketing, so here we go, fabricating again. And you can see the red lens on the back of it, which, if you know what these are, they're turn signal fender lights for a semi-tractor. They really look cool when installed because they kind of give a red glow to the inside of the grille, which you can see at night. Once I got all the brackets done, got all the lights mounted to the brackets, an installation we go, and then we can finish wiring those. As you're mounting lights and accessories, you'll end up with
strings of wire. The same thing under the dash. And just a little item for you to notice is all that wire that's sitting up on the cowl of the truck. Here's where that comes from. I throw it on the cowl, and then I use this to build the looms going to the fuse boxes from the switches. I'm sure a lot of you noticed there's a radiator sitting in this now. That took a lot of modification to fit. I'll show you how I did that on another video. The loom's already in place, so now I can mount these taillights. Cool part about these little trailer boxes that I found to use as these brake lights, I've drilled one hole up here in the top of it that lined up with a hole in the body, which they sit pretty flush here. I put a rubber washer there and one single bolt, so if I actually hit this on a rock or something and it deflects it, it'll just turn the box. It won't bend anything. You can just turn the box back when you're done. So I thought that was a good fit. The signal switch that came with this Jeep will absolutely not work. It's only a 2-pole switch, and I need a 4. I ordered a universal turn signal switch with a hazard switch. Really didn't care much about that, but if it's there, I may as well use it. It came with a really good set of instructions. None. This is where I see a lot of people give up on wiring because there's 8 wires in this loom and you have to guess at what they go to. Well, first thing is you can make an educated guess at what a lot of them go to. Most universal signal wiring somewhat follows universal trailer wiring colors. Now, I use ribbon wire for all my taillights, which is what you would buy if you were wiring a trailer. And knowing that, yellow would be left turn signal, for instance, and green would be right turn signal, for instance. Now, on a turn signal switch, you've got a yellow and a green, and then I've also got like a brown and an orange, which I'm guessing those are the other 2 wires for the signal switch. Now, a signal switch separates your fronts and your rears. The front signals just flash, go through the flasher, and that's it. The rear turn signals have to understand if it's a brake light or a turn signal because they're using the same bulb on this particular style. The Toyota style, I always call it, has an amber turn signal and then a separate red brake light. But on most vehicles, the red light on the back that's your brake light is also the turn signal. So when you push your brakes, the turn signal switch will isolate it as either brake lights and send the power on through to both brake lights, or if you have a turn signal on, it will isolate the brake light to one side and isolate the turn signal to the other side, allowing it to flash. So I just did some pin tests on the 4 wires for my signals, and I figured out, as just a rough guess, an educated guess, I would guess you would call it, I hooked up with a couple of little jumper wires, the green and the yellow to the left and right signal in the front, and the orange and brown wire to the left and right signals in the rear. Then I just started playing with these other 4 wires, and I figured out the red wire, when you power it up, it lights everything up. So I know that comes from the brake light switch. The other 3 wires back here, I've got 2 black wires and a blue wire. One of the black wires has a green stripe on it. Well, just my deductive reasoning, I figured out that green and black wire is probably going to the flasher. My first guess was the blue wire went to the flasher and the black wire was a ground. I guessed wrong there. It turns out the blue wire is the ground and the black wire goes to the flasher. So after I jumpered all this stuff together with my hypothesis here, I did determine that I flipped my turn signal indicator lights under the rears, so they come on when you hit the brake. So I have to switch those to the fronts. I also had to flip the orange and the brown wire because my left was becoming my right and my right was becoming my left. Kind of got a little mixed up there. So, you know, this may look confusing, but if you just spend a little time, a little deductive reasoning, you can figure out where they go. And that's what I did. It kind of irritates me. They really didn't have any instructions. And when I emailed them about that, all they did was link me to a website with a universal wiring diagram. Well, that's great, except it doesn't have the right colors on it. So next, I'm using all LED lighting on this project. So you have to use an LED style flasher, an electronic LED flasher. That way it doesn't do that high-speed flash or not flash at all. Two of the wires, like I said, from the signal switch, which I determined were the black and green, went to the flasher. The third wire on the flasher is fused power from the fuse box. Three-prong LED flasher, and the reason it's three-prong is I'm using a hazard switch. If you don't have a hazard switch style, you can use a two-prong. So now that I know where everything goes, I'm gonna start splicing a whole bunch of stuff together. And as you're splicing all this stuff together, I always try to make things the right length and as neat as I possibly can so it will loom into a harness easy and correctly without it having big knots of wire. No one wants to really work on anything that looks like a bird's nest. All right. See, I've got all my left-right turn signal bulbs. Now the ones with two wires come out of it. Those go to the indicators in the fronts. The others go to the rear. Got me a power wire. The flasher's wired in. The ground terminal. Now I can't wire this one in to anything yet because I don't have my brake switch mounted. Once I get the brake switch and the brake wire mounted, the white and black striped wire goes to the brake switch, and then that feeds the brake side of this. That's all there is to it. And you can see once you kind of get everything taped together and go in the same direction, it really doesn't look all that confusing. Once I mounted the signal switch to the column, then I could neatly run everything under the dash. That green and yellow wire go up into the main electrical dash for the signal indicators. Well, we're having some fun now, aren't we? Most of the electrical is done at this point. We still got a lot of accessories and little stuff to finish up, which we'll do that later on. We've got the wiring to the point we can run test fire, spin it over, but we're lacking fuel. So next time, we're going to take the old gas tank and cut it up, make it fit, because it won't fit with a centered drive line. So I'm going to have to cut the corner off the tank. On top of that, we got to make, an in-tank fuel pump system, pressure return, pressurized fuel, because I don't have the luxury on this of running a carburetor where I can just throw a little 12-volt dump pump and a gas can to make it run. So I really need to run a pressurized system. But that's all for next time. So please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Throw a comment in if you have a question, and we'll see you next time. Well, I ran into Trailmater at the gas station, Rory, and him and I had the same plan getting up here early. Unfortunately, that parking lot's full, but him and I are bringing all our junk over here because this is the other parking lot that no one seems to know about.
There's no, if you make it, yeah.
I didn't want to cut the volume out on this part of the video because I wanted to talk about these vehicles, but someone's blasting radio in the background and I'll get a copyright tag on that. So anyway, these are all of the vehicles that are up here for this event. And give you an idea, $100,000 to $150,000 for one of these cars. Definitely have some scenery from up here.
scissors. Pinch point is officially open. It is open.
How tightly he has to aim. I'll point them out as some of these videos go on, but there are a lot of YouTube video channels here at this event. The lady right above the buggy here is Kim Tanner from Colorado Off-Road. Just keep this in mind, I'm shortening this video up quite a bit. We were on this trail for about 5 hours, start to finish, with just these few vehicles that went up. He's got a 1/4 inch of his roll bar catching, hanging him up. He's got to work himself around that. Coming into view to your right there, that would be Brittany Williams. She is from the YouTube channel Light Bright Nation. The left side looks like nastiness. Just to give you some perspective, this guy here, Jeff, is well over 6 feet tall.
You're wanting a second, and then obviously, yeah.
Well, while we were up at the top, I heard a nice pop, and we now have an issue down here. This might take a while. You can see Kevin Williams down at the bottom. He's Brittany Williams' husband from Light Bright, and the ropes here are provided by Trail Mater, which is Rory out of Moab.
Not only is it
The reason this is actually stuck is not because it's stalled or he flopped over. He could probably still run, but he broke one of the portal axles in this buggy.
Turn the rear to passenger.
lightweight. It's got nice flexible suspension.
This is one of my friends, John Mad Cow Himbel. He is running the old rear engine comp buggy here. It happens to be a little supercharged Chevy 4-cylinder. By the way, that's not a tree they're running over. That's just a branch from the tree that's above it. We never trim it back until we kind of really know where the trail goes. So that branch will get trimmed back. This is another good friend of mine. He lives here locally in Grand Junction. He's been running this buggy for about 15 or more years. Keeps building it as he goes. He is the only buggy here that is not running a portal axle. He's running a traditional axle, but he is at least running rear steer because I don't think you could do this trail at all with a drag axle vehicle.
Save the camera.
particular car is up for sale if anyone wants to jump on it. I think he's around $150,000. It's cresting. These cars are just amazing to me. They just almost defy gravity.
Watch yourself back here. Watch yourself as it goes over.
Plan B, one of these things comes over. Me and Kim over here, we're ducking. That guy up top is not spotting, he's actually filming. That's Kevin Williams from the YouTube channel Light Bright. Okay, we got a new obstacle. He's doing a turnaround. All right, now that I'm out of the way. Coming up there. Keep in mind, this particular buggy is just a guy's trail buggy. This is not a comp buggy, which is what the rest of these cars are. Well, the initial trail opening is finished. Now, Rory from Trail Mater pulled his non-rear steer drag axle buggy up on the pinch point obstacle, and was probably messing around for over an hour. Ended up backing out of the trail before he really broke something. The exit coming out of pinch point's pretty scary in itself. This is all loose rock, dirt, and it's very, very steep.
John Cliff took all the rocks down to the bottom of it.
Take them all?
Yeah.